Welcome back to part 2. In this part of the presentation, we'll be dealing with the data from Spire, what it tells us, the data from Alzheimer's Scotland, a comparison of the two data sources, the discussion group, and generally findings, what comes next. Firstly, dealing with the analysis of the data from Spire. There were issues to consider in terms of the Spire data. The data, firstly, is obtained from individual GP practices in Scotland. However, the Quality and Outcomes Framework indicates that some practices have not actually returned data. This means that populations and registers for clusters, health and social care partnerships, local authorities and health boards are likely to be smaller in the reality. Also, as a means of ensuring patient confidentiality, GP practices do not detail values where there are less than 5 in a particular field. Again, this will result in lesser numbers. It's known that there are significant underreporting of dementia cases generally. Another issue to consider is that local authorities with fewer GP practices could be subject to higher variability due to the smaller sample size. These are issues to take into account with Spire data. Moving on now to Alzheimer's Scotland. Alzheimer's Scotland dementia numbers have been produced by taking population numbers from the National Records Office of Scotland and multiplying these with the European Collaboration in Dementia Eurocode prevalence rates for each age group. In terms of a comparison of data of the two sources, prevalence rates calculated using data obtained from Spire differ substantially from the rates calculated using Alzheimer's Scotland figures. This can be seen clearly in this table. Estimating prevalence rates. The data obtained from Alzheimer's Scotland was seen as the most robust, and it was used to define the prevalence rate estimates and future projections. Moving on to estimating future numbers. Once current prevalence rates were obtained, it was possible to predict future prevalence. These projections were accomplished by applying 2016 base population predictions from the National Records Office to the prevalence rates for dementia and hearing loss, which were calculated using the Davis model. The figures were then projected over a 20-year period in order to establish the overall trend for all 32 councils in Scotland. Moving on now to the qualitative part of the project, the discussion group. We'll deal firstly with the format. On the day of the meeting, participants were given a brief overview of the content and purpose of the research. They were informed that, while the overall aim was to establish prevalence rates for hearing loss and dementia and project these figures into the future, there was an additional project aim. That aim being to establish perception of current service provision for those with hearing loss and dementia. Rather than a structured question, a broad theme was put to the participants to encourage discussion. The participants were asked about their opinion and the level of service for those with dementia and hearing loss in Scotland at this time. They were also encouraged to suggest ideas for improvement. This was to allow as wide a discussion as possible around the topic. Participants were assured confidentiality was guaranteed and all responses would be anonymised. Summary of the discussion points of the group. The main points were sorted into themes and are listed below. These themes were referral of patients to audiology, stigma related to the term dementia, importance of patient autonomy and agency, multi-agency service provision and linking them with cognitive impairment, and the need for education and training. Report findings and recommendations. This report has been a scoping exercise to establish baseline numbers and future projections that would enable future planning for local authority and national level. To supplement this data, it's also been possible to gather some initial views on current provision from members of the audiology profession. Further qualitative research in this respect would be beneficial. In 2014, Wright et al. Carried out a UK-wide exploratory survey of the audiology profession. In this, the researchers defined their work as one of the first papers to explore audiologists' views and experiences of working with people with dementia. They argued that their study brought to the fore interesting points worthy of further research using both quantitative and qualitative methods. This has also been true for their study. Further qualitative research, moreover, involving people with dementia and their carers is essential to inform service planning. As Murphy argues, it is essential to understand the experience of living with dementia from the perspective of people with dementia so that services can be appropriately constructed. In addition, both current and future research proposals highlight the importance of understanding the link between hearing loss, social isolation, and how this influences cognitive decline in dementia in older adults. Social isolation was identified as a possible later life modifying factor for dementia, and as such, establishing the connection with hearing loss has the potential to positively impact 2 of the 9 factors. It is important to consider deafness within the spectrum of the 4 pillars discussed within this report, as although hearing loss has an overarching barrier to inclusion, each pillar has specific barriers that need to be highlighted and addressed in their own right. Overall, in terms of deafness and dementia prevalence in Scotland, there is no central data collection point. The data held by GPs is not as yet accessible by audiology services. Gaps in data recording ultimately result in underreporting and inevitable gaps in service provision for individuals with hearing loss and dementia. Moving forward, it's essential to address these gaps. Future research in the wider arena. Collaborative international studies ongoing at present are scheduled to be published in 2022. For example, researchers at Johns Hopkins University have launched a major randomised control trial which seeks to establish if treatment for hearing loss can actually prevent or slow down cognitive decline. The study will also investigate the impact of any treatment of hearing loss has upon loneliness and isolation. Furthermore, Dr. Piers Dawes will build on previous research at the University of Manchester in a project jointly funded by Alzheimer's Research UK and Action on Hearing Loss. As with the previous new project, results are due in 2022, and within this study, researchers will investigate if dementia is directly caused by hearing loss, if hearing loss is an indirect consequence of social isolation caused by hearing problems, or if there are other biological factors that increase the risk of both hearing loss and dementia. There is a shift in emphasis in terms of research questions as knowledge on hearing loss and dementia is documented. Research studies seek to shed light on the importance of preventing social isolation currently due to hearing loss and the impact this can have on dementia. In this regard, hearing loss is not only a potentially modifiable factor for dementia in its own right, but potentially has the strong link to one of the other factors listed by the Lancet Commission, namely social isolation. If the link between the two is further demonstrated, the importance of managing hearing loss in terms of managing dementia becomes apparent. The current UK-wide COVID-19 lockdown has brought the impact and understanding of social isolation into the mainstream, and the devastating effects that this isolation has on people with dementia has been openly discussed in the media. Those with hearing loss are at risk of increased social isolation. Those with hearing loss and dementia are doubly vulnerable, and the limited social interaction during lockdown increases the risk even further. In terms of summing up, there can be no doubt that COVID-19 pandemic has brought with it a unique chance for a greater understanding of social isolation that many with communication difficulties experience on a daily basis. It is essential to build on these new levels of awareness in society and use the momentum to bridge the gaps that exist in current service provision for those with hearing loss and dementia. I hope you've enjoyed the content of this presentation today. Please take a note of my contact details and don't hesitate to get in touch if you would like to clarify anything. Thank you for your interest. It's been great to tell you about the research journey so far. The last slide here, I've included the references that I've made mention to in the presentation, and also I've included downloading the report information, and my contact details are at the end. Thank you.